Hi, Sherrie. How are you
Hi,
doing?
I'm well. How are you, Alan?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. We were in Portugal last week, so nice and relaxed, although catching up a bit this week. Welcome to this Values Jam, the guest series session. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Sherrie Dunlevy. And Sherrie, would you like to introduce yourself and the wonderful work you do?
Well, thank you very much. Sure. I call myself an inspirationista, and I call myself that because I feel I'm called and I have passion for helping people live with purpose and passion and um, joy so that they can make a positive impact on the world. I'm also the host of the Graduating Grief podcast and founder of the Graduating Grief Academy that helps people transform their pain and suffering into living life that they love again. So that's just in a nutshell about me.
That's fantastic. And it strikes me that there's a wonderful kind of counterbalance there between inspiration and grief, which you don't often hear placed together.
Never really thought about that. I just feel like I really truly feel like it's a calling that I need to shout it from the rooftops is we only get this one life, no matter how long it is. You know, I don't identify myself as a bereaved mother, but I did lose a child back in 1999. So I know and can relate to the kind of pain and grief that you feel, but you can't stay there. My son only lived 29 days, but his life still mattered and it still made an impact. And, 23 years later, it's still making an impact today. And so, I have all these days, weeks, months, and years that I have lived since that time. And if I lived it in a state of grief that whole time, that's two lives that have ended.
Yeah.
And I just, we all, my son, like I said, he only lived 29 days and he impacted lives. So we have an opportunity to do that too. And I just don't want people to allow grief or past hurts to stop them.
Good for you. Good for you. So I've got the Values Jam card deck here, and we're going to find a card. I've
Okay.
recently, actually, I've got a bit of a confession to make because these came out last October, and I kind of like things to be organized. So I always had the deck in alphabetical order. And whenever I played, I always put them back into alphabetical order.
Really?
Yeah. But then around about a month ago, I thought, let's shuffle them up and leave it like that.
Yeah.
And I'm coping. I'm coping.
Okay. So you're releasing and letting I do think it should be like a random kind of thing.
Yeah,
So good for
absolutely.
you.
So I'm gonna shuffle the deck that I have. So just mix them up. And then how many times would you like me to cut the deck?
Cut it 3 times.
Okay. And so I've now got three piles in front of me. Would you like the left one, the right one, or the center one?
Oh, let's go left.
Okay. And in terms of number of cards, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So a number between 1 and 18.
A number between 1 and 18. I'm going to say 13. That's the first number that came to me.
Okay. Ooh. Let's see where we go with this then.
Sustainability.
Sustainability. So the first question for a values jam is always in the same style. So what does sustainability mean to you? And what does it look, feel, and sound like?
Sustainability, what it means to me, is uh, what keeps you going, maybe?
Yeah, I
What
think
keeps you going?
it's a good
And
way to think of it.
and what were the other three?
So the other part of this question is kind of metaphor. So if you think about sustainability, what does it look like? What images come to mind, or how does it feel?
Well,
What does it sound like?
what comes to mind is the, ecological. You always hear sustainability when it comes to, the ecology and how in world, like Mother Earth. And so that's what it speaks to me. So I guess it looks green. It smells fresh, maybe earthy. Um, yeah, I guess that's what comes to me when I hear
Yeah.
sustainability.
It's interesting that you mentioned the environmental piece there, because like you say, sustainability these days tends to be used a great deal in that space. But when I think about sustainability, what you said first about it's like keeping going, for me, that's a more kind of full sense of what sustainability is. It's just, for me, it's about this keep going, keep going. And so if you start something, so projects, for instance, in business, I just sent a proposal off yesterday. And in the proposal, it said something about how in organizations, people get very excited about projects and there's a budget and a team and all this sort of stuff. But then when that job is done, often the interest wanes and the thing falls away. And there's something there about the importance of embedding it so well that it is sustainable. What we're talking about here, and it keeps on, keeps on, keeps on. I like your green and the fresh smell. On the sound, I've just got this never-ending chord in my mind, just bing.
Okay.
Because sustainability, I couldn't put it better. It's keep on going.
Yeah, for me, I think when you picked that word, it was kind of confusing to me because I really have never thought of it in terms other than the environment.
Yeah.
Or how do you sustain energy, like when it comes to um health and wellness, maybe.
Yeah. I think for me, it's that whole thing around it being lasting rather than this short flash in the pan type thing. So in the fitness space, how many people sign up to a gym or
Right.
start a program, but then they don't sustain it. Actually, there's something that they get bored with it or whatever it is. And there's other values words that are very closely linked, I think, to sustainability. And there's a lot around being determined and relentless, in order to be sustainable. It's not an easy thing to do.
Discipline is probably
Yes.
necessary for sustainability,
Yeah.
or a lack of discipline would keep you in a state of maybe, because you're either growing or you're declining. So so it would be a state of decline, which is also sustainable,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just positive sustainability, but negative sustainability as well. And, I'm thinking right now, like my mind is going to grief. We can have sustainability when it comes to pain and trauma and grief if we don't choose to, change our habits or change and choose growth. Likewise, what you're saying is if you're in the health and wellness and you're going to the gym, if you don't sustain that, you're eventually going to decline. But it takes that discipline to sustain and maybe even build better,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
And what about, so in that space of, when we're talking about the word discipline you mentioned, and for me, I don't know about you, but discipline doesn't have great connotations for me. But actually, I know this because we referred, let me just find the section in this book about, there's a chapter about discipline.
Mhm.
So I'll just read you the first paragraph.
Okay.
The word discipline is derived from the Latin root disciplinare, which means to teach. It is about instilling values and behavior through positive learning, shaping, or correcting behavior. It's about setting norms and limits and training, perhaps to follow a specific teaching or code. Linked to discipline is disciple, someone who, of their own free will, chooses to follow a master, a guru, a teacher. And so when you think of discipline in those terms, it's a lot friendlier word than...
Yes.
Because I think with sustainability, I kind of rail against discipline a bit because it's kind of boring and it's like, I have to do this. Whereas if it's that type of teach yourself, learn, grow, then maybe it's a way to help you accommodate it a bit better. And I'm interested to know a bit more about, you were talking about the connection with grief and how if you don't do something about it, it is sustained. How do you encourage people to break it?
There's a lot of things. First of all, to choose something different,
Okay.
not accept it. I think that with grief, especially when you lose a child, there are so many other people out there that will tell you you'll never get over it. And I think that's unfair. And I remember when, I heard that, I was like, you have to be able to, you have to be able to. I can't stay in this state of pain the rest of my life. I won't survive if I do, right? And so there had to be something else. And I was looking for it. I knew that I had to feel it. I knew that I had to move through it, but I just could not accept that this was a death sentence for me as well. And maybe that's where, hope and faith come in. So you have that, you'll never get over it. You'll always have to learn to live with it. You can get to a certain point, but that's it. There's a lid on it. Like there's just this lid. And I thought, okay, I bought into that. I got, like I was down here and I got to about here. And I just thought, okay, this is how I have to live my life. It's not like it was when it was here. It's here now, but okay. And so for 13 years, that's how I truly lived, just kind of, flat. And then I did some actual work with a grief coach and realized that I could get back here, maybe even get here, but I didn't have to live and dwell here forever. Even though it was a bit better than where I was before, I could change if I did some mindset change, if I did some forgiveness work, if I really tackled the feelings that I was having and faced the things that I was afraid to say or whatever. The other myth is that, time will heal it. And so how many people just sit around and wait, right? And they wait for something to change them when they could have been in the driver's seat all along.
Yeah, and you're making me think around, so as far as sustainability is concerned, what you just said is making me think that actually, ultimately, it is a choice. It might not be an easy choice.
No.
But it's a choice about what we choose to sustain.
Right.
And then the other piece is it won't do it on its own. we need to take action. And just going back to sustainability with the planet here, you know, for how many years now we've been talking about what a disaster is coming. But it seems to me that people aren't actually doing anything. They're just still talking about the target and, you know, in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And without that action, there is no sustainability of the things that you want to be sustained.
Right. There has to be action, you know, there has to be a decision, and then there has to be, you know, well, there has to be a choice.
Yeah.
And then a decision.
Yeah.
Right, because a choice and decision aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, you can choose something and then you have to decide whether what your choice is going to be or not, right? And so that, I think, is, you know, it's choice, then decision, and then action.
Yeah.
And you know, there's I've been doing I'm writing a blog right now about the things that I can control and the things that I can't control. And there's so much in this world that I can't control. And you think about the climate, you think about the environment, that's so outside of, you know, all of us, right? We feel that it is. But everything in life has to start with the individual.
Yeah.
Everything in life has to start with the individual. So who knows, the habits that we use to take care of the environment then trickles down to our neighbors seeing us, our children seeing us, instilling those habits, you know, into another generation. That's the only thing that I can think of that I can control right now about this. You know, I'm not schooled in it, I'm not educated in it, but I do know what I can do right now, and I can't control what the rest of the world does. I can only control what I do. So I can make those changes. I can say it's real and that it's important to me and that it's something that I value. And by living my example, hopefully it catches on. But think about it, if everybody would take that personal responsibility.
Yeah, dead right. And then so I agree with that. What I'm thinking also is that there are some people who are in a more or in a position to have a bigger impact than others. So, for instance, I don't know how it's dealt with in your country, but in the UK, a short while ago, the supermarkets started charging for plastic bags. So if you wanted a plastic bag, you had to pay. Others have stopped using them altogether. And so those people in those positions making those choices and decisions can actually have a bigger impact than me or you doing our little thing. So I think it's about bringing both of those together at the same time.
Right. Absolutely. How can I make a difference? And if you look at your business that way, if you look at your, you know, what about our elected officials? And it starts even at the smallest village, you know, the elected officials in the village. Are we going to have a recycling program? You know, just something simple like that. Are we going, and if we're not going to have a recycling program, do we have a place where people can drop off recyclables so that recycling centers can pick them up? So, you know, there are things that we all can do. I don't, you know, but like I said, it all has to start with you. And if it's important to you, you know, if it's, you know, because all of us have, that's what's so beautiful about this world. We're all individuals and we're all called to different things, finding things that are important to us. And so if we use our gifts, talents, and abilities, you know, so if environmental sustainability is so important to me, then not only does it start at home, but then I can say, you know what, it's too important. It needs to go beyond. I can run for village council, or I can make a proposal to village council, or I could, you know, but I'm just saying that it might light a fire under, you know, things light a fire, and those things in life that light a fire under you, it's for a reason.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you've reminded me here is this whole thing around um, the tug, or the tug of war between what you might like to believe in at a conceptual level versus what you're willing to put up with or give up at a personal level.
Mhm.
And actually, it was a different values jam. We were values jamming about protection for the environment. It's probably about a month or two ago.
Mhm.
And I was talking about how I would find it a real challenge if, say, I lived in a beautiful part of the world with fantastic views and on the doorstep of nature and all that, which I love. And somebody said, well, it would be a great idea to put a wind turbine in your vicinity.
Mhm.
That would be good for the environment and for the planet. And I would find that really tough because, yes, it is the right thing to do. But I would feel bad about it being spoiling my environment. Um, and I think there's the other thing in that is there's something about information, because not so long ago I found out how much water it takes to get a steak on a plate. And it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. And until that moment, I was very happy eating steak a lot. And now I eat less because it is just so much water that is taken to get that thing onto your plate, and it's not right. But again, so there's those two things. One is what you're willing to give up personally, and then secondly, are you equipped with the information to make those choices?
Right.
So let's move on to another question. So the opposite side of this coin, where have you noticed unsustainability?
In my lack of disciplines. Yeah, that's where unsustainability. It's so funny that you were talking about the health and wellness part of this. I started in June. I've gone through a really personal grief. I don't want to say battle, but I've lost 3 significant people within a year,
Wow.
and walking has been a great healer for me.
Yeah.
And as soon as the weather became much more pleasant, I found myself drawn to walking so much that I was walking every
Great.
single day. And I was developing this discipline, and I was feeling very, very good about it. And I missed a day, and I was having a really hard time with missing a day, right? And so that's what happens. I think that's our brains can do this crazy thing that said, all right, you blew it.
Yeah.
You blew it. And so then I went on a cruise, and I tried to keep up, but then a couple days there because we had excursions or whatnot, and so I didn't get my walk in for that day. And I'm slowly trying to build back up, because I thought, you know what, I am going to sustain this. This is good for my mental health, my emotional well-being, and of course my physical well-being. And so I've just been in a personal, kind of boxing match with sustainability when it comes to health and wellness, and building a discipline. And maybe I should, maybe I could couch that and phrase it, shift it a little, that says, no, I'm building a habit, a good habit, instead of a discipline. Because, the one thing that you said when you were reading the 31 practices, when they said it is a positive. Discipline is a positive,
Yeah.
because, in my country, a parent disciplines their child, and so and we always think in school, when you're disciplined,
Yeah.
it never feels positive.
Yeah.
It never feels positive to the person that's being disciplined.
Hmm. And yet with that route of disciplinare to teach, it should be a positive
It
experience.
should be.
Yeah.
So we're not using the teaching element of
Yeah.
it. So kind and compassionate disciplining of someone else should have the teaching with
Definitely.
it. And I think that's the missing link. And maybe that's why we're not so receptive.
Yeah. And with you, maybe so instead of beating yourself up about missing a day,
Right.
maybe just be curious about why did you miss that day and how are you going to avoid missing another day? You know, it's no problem. It's done, right? You can't do anything about it.
You can't do anything about it, but boy, your ego will try to get involved in
Yeah.
this. And your ego is going to chastise you for missing that day.
Yeah.
But your ego is also going to say, oh, come on, you missed one day, big deal. And let's miss tomorrow. And let's go have a hot fudge sundae while we're at it. You blew it anyhow.
I'm like that with like chocolate, for instance. So, you know, it'll be in the evening, and if I have a piece of chocolate, then maybe a bit later on, I'm thinking, you really didn't have to do that. You shouldn't have had that piece of chocolate. And then a voice says, yeah, but you did have it, so you might as well have the rest of the bar now.
Right. So we got to figure out, if we could figure out a way to shut down that voice, we'd be good to go, I think.
So what about, we've talked a bit about the environment, so I'm not going to do the how could more sustainability improve the world. There's a question on ValuesJam cards, which is to make up your own question. So can I invite you to ask your own question about sustainability? So start it with who, what, where, when, why, or how. Does anything come to mind?
Yes, the question is, how do people sustain positive attitudes and joyful living after a painful past? I would like to know that about other people. How do they do that? How do they sustain joy-filled living?
So I can give you my best shot, and I'd love to hear yours in return. I'm thinking about when I'm divorced, so I call her my ex-mother-in-law. So she passed away a couple of years ago. She was a lovely lady, and I knew her better than I knew my own mum, because my mum died when I was kind of not young, but I knew Stella for a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
And she passed away 2 days after I'd seen her. And so the way that I dealt with it was, one, to remind myself that it happens. You know, people die. She wasn't poorly, but she wasn't well either. So she was starting to become frail. I reminded myself that it happened quickly for her and without pain. And I think that's a great thing for people to have, you know, compared to what some alternatives are. I chose to celebrate my memories of her rather than think about the fact that she was no longer here. And the other thing I remember from her, the service, was the word kindness used with her. And I often think about her in those terms. So that's how I maintained a positive spirit with that. Oh, and another one was that she would not have wanted to cause sadness.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
What about you? I mean, you see this more from a professional perspective. What I've given you were, well, I guess both actually, because your professional interest was sparked by your personal experience, right?
Right. Yes. Well, I lost my father last year, and so I remember the first Father's Day that came up, and I thought, I have a choice here of, and it was literally Mother's Day is in May and Father's Day is in June. He died in May, right before Mother's Day, but I mean, so I had about a month after he died, so it wasn't like I had a lot of. I was still in deep grief, but I thought, I can. I have a choice here. I can sit here and I can weep and cry because it's my first Father's Day without my dad.
Yeah.
Or I could do something to honor him on this day. And so one of the things my dad loved and I love is we love flowers and flower gardens. And we have a local store here called a chain store called Lowe's. And he would always call me and leave voicemails. Hey, Cher, Lowe's has, they've just marked down all of their perennial, whatever. And they're 75% off. Do you want me to grab you any, So I went to Lowe's the day before Father's Day, and I went to the clearance rack and I found a butterfly bush that was 50% off. And on Father's Day, I planted that. And I thought, you know what? Not only, did I do something that I think he would have gotten a kick out of, but then as it blooms and it's going to bring beauty to my life. And it's going to, bring beautiful butterflies and feed the butterflies and the bees. And so it was much more, it was honoring, like on steroids almost for me.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned that honoring because Stella used to love fish and chips. And so on her birthday every year, we have fish and chips.
Yeah.
And it's funny, coming back to sustainability, it feels to me like a way of sustaining their spirit.
Yes.
Beyond
the memory. Yeah, right. It's how it's sustainability is immortality.
Yeah. And just because you're dead doesn't mean to say you can't kind of live on in some way.
Right. And so let's take that one step further. If sustainability is immortality, then how are we living our lives? Let's really go deep. How are we living our lives so that when our time comes, what is going to be our legacy is a positive or a negative one?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate sustainability, is a positive legacy.
Yeah. And I just had a conversation not so long ago about this. So as part of the work that I do, I'm developing a network of licensed practitioners to use the 31 practices approach. And so, if I was to die tomorrow, then there are licensed practitioners out there that are generating income for my company. So I was thinking about how can I set up something so that when I'm gone, it will carry on. What a great way for people to still benefit from what you've created if it can continue and be sustainable after you're gone.
Right. Beautiful.
All right. So that was a brilliant question, by the way. Yeah, and actually you just reminded me as well, there's this is what's it called? Aftercloud. Right?
Darren, yes.
We both know Darren. And I think his tools are a brilliant way for people to kind of do what we've just been talking about keeping their loved ones kind of alive as much as you can through a recording of pictures or sound recordings or whatever it is. I've not signed up to that, but I've got a book of photographs that we put together when Stella passed. And so I've got my answer to this question that I'm going to ask you now. And it's the final question.
Okay.
So what are you encouraged to do differently about sustainability as a result of our conversation?
What am I going to do differently? What am I inspired to do differently? You've inspired me because I've been feeling a little bit low, and you've been inspiring me to, like, get back up and get going again. That you've just, that's and sustain. This is important work that I'm doing. And sometimes you rest, sometimes you trip and fall, sometimes, and it's just, is it worth it? It's hard work. But it's important work. And I feel called to be the messenger of the message. And so I have to do it regardless. It's just who I am. So yeah, to keep, really, to take sustainability outside of my brain, outside of the environment, and into the work that I do and into the life that I live.
Okay. And can I ask you what the first small step is going to be?
Probably to recap our conversation and write a blog about it.
Okay. Mine is, I'm going to look through that book of photographs with Stella in it to sustain my memory of her.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So I'm going to do that as soon as we call an end to this. So that's a really great note to finish this Values Jam on, Sherrie. So, and it's really weird because when I drew the card, I didn't feel great. Sustainability.
Yeah, I didn't either. When I saw it, I went, "Oh, really?"
Yeah. But we've had, how would I describe this conversation? I've really enjoyed the kind of the more kind of expected exploration of sustainability, but then we've touched on this thing around discipline. I've really enjoyed that. And then also finishing on this high note where you're kind of celebrating life beyond the physical being, if you like. And I think that's really struck me. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure to see you again, to jam with you again, Al.
Okay, cheers, Sherrie. Bye.
Bye.